Good evening and welcome to Communities in Place Policy and Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Finnegan and I'll be chairing tonight's meeting. I'm supported by my Vice Chair, by our officers, directors and cabinet members. We are being live streamed this evening and broadcasts will be available on the Council's YouTube page. This is a meeting in which the public can attend, however it is not a public meeting. I'm very pleased that we have members of the public attending this evening and we will they'll be making statements later on under agenda number 8. So thank you very much for attending. We're not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if you do hear an alarm, please make your way to the nearest fire exits at the rear of the chamber and then to the central access point, which is outside the Lynn Cross pub. May I also remind everybody in the chamber to please switch off your mobile phones. I'm always guilty, so I'm going to double check mine in a second, or turn them to silent mode. If members of the committee or other councillors wish to speak this evening, could you please clearly raise your arm? Remember to turn on your microphone and then turn it off again after speaking. It'd be very useful if we could introduce ourselves this evening, so I'll start with my right. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Paul Anderson, Director of Communities.
I'm Barbara Childs, Director of Place.
Hi, I'm Laura Parker, Head of Recycling and Waste.
And I'm Mandy Cunningham, Community Services Manager.
Thank you. And to my left?
Judy Carboni, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 1 is apologies for absence. Received apologies from Councillor Utown and Councillor Minto, and Councillor Trollope has also said that he's likely to be late this evening. Do we have any other apologies?
I've not received any, no.
Okay. I really do appreciate people being able to attend these meetings. I know it often clashes with several other meetings people have in the evening, so thank you very much for attending. I don't expect it to be a very long meeting this evening, so thank you. Agenda item number 2 is minutes. Thank you, Judy, for producing the previous minutes. Have we received any comments? No comments. Any comments this evening? Okay, thank you. I'm happy that they're a true and accurate reflection of our meeting held on the 13th of January. So are we all in agreement? Thank you. I'll sign those later. Thank you very much, Judy. Actions from our last meeting, that's agenda item number 3, pages 11, 12 of your pack. At the last Communities in Place Performance and Scrutiny meeting, a question was asked in relation to Age UK hubs. The Head of Housing and Community Services has confirmed that Age UK are looking at providing a range of pop-ups across the district, as well as amenities from Lavinia House. This means that services will be delivered locally, which will provide a much better service than simply a day centre in Horsham. Another action from the last meeting has been dealt with, I believe, outside of this meeting, was to update Councillor Trollope on the swimming pools in Billingshurst, and that's been dealt with outside of the meeting. Thank you. Thank you. Item number 4, sorry, this is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members at the committee? No declarations? Yes, okay, we'll just hold on 1 second. Councillor Trollope's just attending. Councillor Trollope, you just made it in time just to ask, have you got any declarations of interest for this evening? Thank you. Any announcements from the Chief Exec? None from me. No, thank you. Item number 6, resolution of call-ins. We don't have any of those. Item number 7, responses from full council or cabinet. None of those either. So we move straight on to item number 8. This is protection of Horsham Park fields in trust. You see that on pages 13 to 24 of your pack. This item will go in the following order. First of all, I'll give a very quick introduction. We will then receive a draft report. I will then ask the members of the public to deliver their statements, and then members of the committee will be able to sort of address questions from the front. We're not specifically here to answer questions from the members of the public. Cabinet has previously considered the possibility of placing Horsham Park under the National Fields in Trust scheme. That was back in 20th of November 2024. The park is in the Den Ward. This would require the council to agree to enter into a deed dedicating the park as a site of recreation, public open space and sports fields. Officers have worked with Fields in Trust on issues such as the boundary treatment, the boundary, and have remained in contact with Friends of Horsham Park. I note that places like the rec rooms and the pavilions are outside of the boundary and the bowling green is excluded. The report sets out alternative options such as taking no action and why Fields in Trust is the recommended way forward. I'm going to hand over to the director now to receive a report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. You've taken half of my introduction to the
Right.
report. So, Fields and Trust has been something, and the protection of Horsham Park has been something that Horsham District Council has had on its priorities since 2023. It was in the annual plan for 23-24. And as we're in the early stages of 2026, we've clearly taken time to take this work forward. That's been deliberately so to make sure that when the council and cabinet is recommended to make a decision of this nature, officers can say to the cabinet, it's been properly considered, it's been properly scrutinised, it's been robustly challenged internally, so that we're content with this change to the governance of Horsham Park. There's been significant review, and as the report sets out, our recommendation is that Fields and Trust is the best approach to securing the park for the future. I think a really important point is the point that the park exists for open space, sports, recreation and leisure, and that's what the Field and Trust deed of dedication seeks to protect. So ideally, if Horsham District Council puts Horsham Park into the Fields and Trust scheme, we never talk to Fields and Trust again. Because if we're doing that, we're running the site as it is designed. And that gives the council, whether it's Horsham District Council, a future unitary, or a town or parish council, that gives them the opportunity to run the site how they wish. And if they want to build tennis courts, rugby fields, volleyball, archery, whatever they want, it's sport, it's recreation, they can do that, and there's no need to seek permission from any third party. There are cases where there may be a need to go to Fields and Trust to seek permission, and they would be situations whereby we're potentially moving away from the deed of dedication. So, for instance, if the council wanted to build something in the park, okay, a community hub, a shop, a block of flats, that's outside of the deed of dedication, that would require permission. If we created, or if the council created, a sports facility that's in line with sport and recreation, but the decision was taken to lease it to a third party to manage, that would need Fields and Trust approval. And every time the lease was renewed, that would require approval from them. But what we're doing here is proposing a red line around the park that excludes all leased buildings. And so the vision is that the council can continue to run the park, the tennis courts, the football fields, the skate park, and all the planting and voluntary work that happens in the park at the moment, as it does currently. Going forward to unitary town council makes no difference whatsoever. So that the new authority would be required to run the park in line with the Fields and Trust deed of dedication. And it takes nothing away from future decisions around spending more or spending less on the park. So if decisions were taken to cut grass more often, less often, do less field marking on football pitches, that's all operational decisions that lie with the local authority. What this report does, it seeks to do, is to secure that park as a place for future generations to play football, to play tennis, to volunteer, to relax, to enjoy themselves, and to continue to maintain what we have in the town at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We'll have a chance to discuss this afterwards, but first of all, I would like to go now to our public speakers. And I must say, thank you very much. We really do appreciate when we do get public speakers at these meetings. May I please remind you that you're able to provide a statement, and thank you, you've submitted those in advance also. Councillors may wish to discuss the points that you raised this evening, but we are not necessarily responding to your questions. So our first public speaker this evening is Steve Sandon, the Vice Chair of Friends of Horsham Park. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. The Friends of Horsham Park, now more than 600 members strong and growing rapidly, often with more than 10,000 views on Facebook, work closely with the Council's Parks and Countryside team, contributing thousands of volunteer hours each year. This reflects not just affection for the park, but active community investment in its care and future. We urge you to protect Horsham Park in perpetuity through Fields in Trust, and Horsham Society will focus on the need for protection and Den Neighbourhood Council on Fields in Trust. Our statement is on community. Horsham Park is central to the identity, well-being and attractiveness of our town. Residents consistently tell us that they chose to live and raise their families here because of it. At weekends and during holidays, it's a lively and often crowded. Even on winter weekdays, it's well used. As Paul mentioned, it supports physical, mental well-being with over 700 park runners, children and teens off-screen, being active in the playground, the maze or skate park, people of all ages playing football, tennis, attending boot camps, jogging or walking with their friends or dogs, enjoying the trees, the pond, the gardens and the wildlife. It provides space for families, social groups and community events, offering opportunities for quiet reflection, community connection and celebration, all of which is consistent with the Council's active wellbeing strategies. It's also a vital hub, linking wildlife corridors across the town, supporting nature and bringing it closer to residents. As Horsham grows, access to high-quality green space will be even more important, not less. And years from now, residents will live with the consequences of your decision. This is your opportunity to provide certainty, to protect something that is irreplaceable and ensure future residents inherit a Horsham that is greener, healthier and stronger because you chose to protect its heart. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Our second speaker this evening is John Steele, President of the Horsham Society and Chair of the Blueprint Neighbourhood Forum. If you could please try to stick to your 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening. The Horsham Society is the civic society for the town, founded in 1955, since when protection of our green spaces has been a consistent concern. We welcome very much this proposal to protect the park in perpetuity. It's only through public protest and campaigning that we still have the park we have today. In 1975, only a year after the creation of HTC, the council itself was planning to take a large section of the park to build new offices. We led the successful campaign to oppose this. More recently, despite opposition, there were plans to sell off Park House as a hotel, which only failed because of inadequate parking. The subsequent temporary ice rink was believed by many to be an attempt to downgrade the space, justify a new car park and revive the hotel project. Again, this was defeated by public protest. When the Horsham Blueprint Neighbourhood Plan was being written, we considered designating the park as a local green space. We didn't, only because we knew the Friends were seeking Fields in Trust status, which would provide greater protection. However, there's an action in our neighbourhood plan to support the Friends in this endeavour. We live in uncertain times, with local government reorganisation looming and ever greater pressure from the government to increase the density of development in towns. With more people living in apartment blocks, the need for the park has never been greater, and neither have the risks. The prospect of Horsham's future being decided many miles away by councillors with little understanding of our town, and the poor protection provided by the existing covenants, make in our view an unarguable case for putting the park in trust and doing it now. Our park is a testament to the generosity of the Hurst family and the foresight of the Urban District Council almost 100 years ago. We urge today's councillors to exercise similar foresight in dedicating as a field in trust to ensure that it will still be here in another 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Our third speaker this evening is Trudy Mitchell, who's the chair of Den Neighbourhood Council. Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Den Neighbourhood Council has a memorandum of understanding with Horsham District Council to be consulted on matters concerning Horsham Park, its management and policies. We work closely with the Friends Group and fully support their efforts to protect this invaluable community asset. 6 years ago, the Friends proposed safeguarding Horsham Park as protected green space through a deed of dedication with Fields in Trust. Since then, political leadership at HDC has changed, and local government reorganisation now threatens to shift control of the park to a distant authority, where financial pressures could outweigh any benefits to the health and well-being of the public. A deed of dedication has never been more important. The land would not be placed in a trust. It would simply be dedicated for recreational use only. We recognise the park's complex history of covenants, and we thank the legal department for its thorough review. The current proposal minimises risk and safeguards the park's future. The deed excludes leased areas such as buildings and car parks, as changes to those would require permission from Fields in Trust. It protects all green space, including the sensory garden, playgrounds, outdoor gyms and other facilities. Moreover, it allows flexibility. Enhancements to leisure use, such as a 3G football pitch or changing rooms, would not require Fields in Trust consent. As long as the land remains for recreation, there is no obstacle to evolving community interests and needs. There will be no change to management and no additional cost to HDC. Future involvement with Fields in Trust is expected to be minimal. Councillors, now is your time to stand by your election pledges and earn the thanks of current and future generations by agreeing to this proposal. The park needs protection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I have received some comments beforehand from Councillor Jeffrey. I believe are our speakers going to leave, or you're welcome to leave, or you're welcome to stay for the discussions. Received some comments in advance from Councillor Jeffrey. Some of those were going to be the same one as mine. You pinched but you got to me beforehand last night in asking. And I think that what I've heard from Paul this evening is actually a lot of the answers have all been woven into that. But just to let people know for transparency, Councillor Jeffrey was raising questions such as the control over the site and external consent required, but also perhaps some governance issues to do with delegating authority, returning to cabinet or cabinet members, rationale. What's this one? The override options, and this one was about ongoing monitoring for the successor authority. So I think we've heard some of that, but I wanted to make sure, Councillor Jeffrey, that your questions have been answered if you want to ask anything else first.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm quite satisfied with majority of the answers that were provided earlier today. Apologies once again for the lateness of those questions. Just one that I wanted to follow up on in the meeting was, obviously it's been established that the deed would reduce HSC's control of the site. But obviously the trade-off is that greater protection. But when it comes to maybe future decisions on the sites, for example, in the answers that I received earlier today, it was stated that, for example, if HDC or a successor authority wanted to build a new sports facility, using the example of a 3G pitch, for example, that this would not that would not require Fields and Trust approval. However, if it were leased to a football club, for example, that it would. Is that purely, just to my understanding, is that purely to safeguard the open recreation side of things, or is there other reasons for that? Why that would why a lease to a football club, for example, would specifically require Fields and Trust approval, but the council directly managing it wouldn't?
Thank you. Yeah, it's essentially any lease. So we've got the coffee shop, the boxing club, the leisure centre, all of those sites. If they're within the demise, Fields and Trust require oversight of the lease and any changes. So it's just a basic requirement of them. So if we wanted to, and it's difficult when you're talking about future options because there are no current plans for any of these things, but if we wanted to build a 3G football pitch, Horsham District Council, you could book with us, no problem. If you wanted to book with the football club, then there's a process that we would have to go through.
Has that answered all your questions for now?
Yes, I'm satisfied, Chair. It was mainly just a point of clarification because, obviously, as the officer just said, there are no plans currently, but it was more about future proofing and ensuring that we didn't unintentionally tie the hands of maybe an successor authority without realising it, basically. And yes, I'm quite satisfied with that answer. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a quick question just off the back of that. I understand that other areas have been put in under the Field and Trust schemes elsewhere in Horsham, and is there any lessons learnt, any good points, bad points that we can pick up on that if we were to go ahead with this that we've learnt from the past, and also the potential for other green spaces such as Bramber Brooks to be considered for the Field and Trust scheme as well. Thank you.
I think in terms of lessons learned, at the very early stages when we were talking to councillors about Fields and Trust, Councillor Landeyu from Rudgwick spoke about the experiences with the land that Rudgwick Parish Council own, and that site in Rudgwick has a number of facilities that are leased out to third parties, and so he was talking to officers and councillors about the costs that Rudgwick Parish Council incur on a regular basis when they're reviewing those leases. That's why we were very careful to ensure that in our the demise of the park for our purposes, there were no leased buildings, and which is why when you look at the red line, the bowling club is deliberately excluded. In terms of the opportunity for other sites, council could decide to look at Fields and Trust for any or all of its open spaces. I think for me, Bramber Brooks, my question would be, what's the risk around Bramber Brooks? Because it's very difficult to develop because it floods. But I think there is a piece of work we need to do, and officers will be doing in the next financial year around our countryside sites, because we've got a number of countryside sites in our district which are precious to our communities and precious to us as local authority, and we need to make sure that we're comfortable that they will be managed as countryside sites into the long term. So that's a piece of work we'll be doing with the Parks and Countryside team over 26-27.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to open up to committee members. Anybody got any questions? Okay, we've got hands. Councillor Bateman first, thank you.
Yeah, it's just a quick sense check, really. I know the fields, they're used for many, many different purposes, from the obvious football, but right down to primary schools using it for country dancing. Have we sense checked that all those kind of things can still carry on? I'm assuming so.
Yeah, every current use of the park can continue, and that includes the Sunday Fun Day, that includes the fairground when they come. There are some restrictions if you want to take up, I think it's 40% of the park for more than 25 consecutive days, then you would require Fields and Trust permission for that. I can't imagine that we're going to do that, because that's it's a hell of a size. But if we wanted to put on, Glastonbury at some point, I think we'd probably have more than Fields and Trust we're worrying about.
Does that answer your question at the moment? Okay, Councillor Trollope.
Hi, it's a very simple question, and
it doesn't really change anything for me. Just more curious. What is the definition of in perpetuity? Is it literally a lifetime plus two, or is it forever in whatever legal sense that is? Just want to make sure, like in 150 years, suddenly we don't have a housing estate there.
No, it's forever in whatever legal sense that is. So it's not, it's forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry. Councillor Beard, sorry. You're right.
Excitement levels. Thanks, Pete. Yeah, no, more not a question, just deep gratitude for the work that everyone has put into making this a possibility and putting community, which is so important, and the more than human world, both at equal measures. So yeah, a huge thank you to the people sitting in the public gallery and to you guys in the offices. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, just briefly, and apologies, Chairman, for arriving a little late to this, but I'm very glad that I got here in time. A huge thank you to the officers in particular for this has been a major piece of work over many years, looking at lots and lots of possible implications. When this first arrived to councillors under the old PDAG, the Public Policy Development Advisory Group system, there wasn't the facility to discuss it in a meeting in public with contributions from members of the public in this way. So I'm really glad that now that extensive work has been done and we've been able to hear these contributions from members of the public and very eloquently express the clear desire and need for this piece of work. We're able to have these questions publicly answered. I've got one very brief final question. I'm not sure the Director of Communities will forgive me particularly for raising this, but I just wanted to make sure in regards to some ongoing memoranda of understanding that the Council might have with other groups such as the Shelley Memorial Project relating to possible future things that might occur within the park site, do they are they similarly unaffected?
Yes, the Shelley project would not be affected by Fields and Trust.
I think it was just helpful to have that out loud in a public meeting sometime. I really appreciate the work that the officers have done on this and that the members of the public have lobbied for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Any other questions from Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Chairman. A question and then a bit more after that. Picking up on what Councillor Jeffrey said, presumably if the tennis courts were going to be handled by a third party, they would need to deal with Fields and Trust, would they? It's not written into this agreement anywhere that that sort of activity would be under the jurisdiction of the council rather than coming under FIT.
So the council manages the bookings for the tennis courts currently, so that can continue. If there was, if we were to lease the tennis courts to a tennis club, then it would. I think if we outsourced our booking system, then no, it wouldn't. Okay. You know, if the funding continues to come to Horsham District Council.
So the key there is the funding comes to Horsham, the account HDC or its successor, rather than a third party. Is that what the key is in this?
I think it's if we use a third party to manage the bookings, but they're managing on our behalf, then I think that would be fine. If we were charging a rent to a tennis club and then they paid us whatever their rent was and they took all the income from the tennis courts, then that would require Fields and Trust sign off.
If I can come back, Chairman. Basically, I mean, I was not at all convinced about putting this in the demise of Fields and Trust in view of what happened in Rudgwick and a couple of other places. I thought that it would be deleterious to the running of the park and impact on it. So I'm glad to hear that the modern version of FIT is a bit more flexible and interesting. I mean, Den Neighbourhood Council representative actually reminded us of the complexity of the structures that were in place there. Looking at the contract and going through it, I'm quite glad to see that actually we seem to have nailed down the main points that I was concerned about. especially if you look at clauses 3.3, 3.6 and onwards. That particular part of the contract, I think, makes it, the placement of it into fields and trusts far more acceptable, at least from my perspective. So I'd like to thank at least the legal brains behind it and the officers for having answered a lot of the concerns that were brought up in the early days. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Before I go to non-members, any other committee members wishing to speak on this item? No. Any non-committee members? Councillor Buffy.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you to all the committee members for their consideration of this so far, officers for the work putting it in, and also the contributions from the members of the public. Just because I always like to try and clarify things as much as possible, it goes back to Councillor Jeffrey's initial question, really, about, you know, what's the difference between leasing it to a football club or something. I think it's around an understanding point of what constitutes a commercial relationship and what does not. And while you might be leasing it to a third party for them to essentially do the same thing that you are doing, but for through a different structure, the very nature of entering into that agreement commercialises an area of the park in a way that it wouldn't have been otherwise. So that's kind of the key point of it, really. Yes, that could potentially, in some future scenario, happen with the tennis courts, but yeah, it's that commercialisation nature of the relationship, and sometimes it might be something that you might not see it as being commercial, but simply by entering into a lease and receiving rent for it, that's what it is. But yeah, otherwise, obviously, clearly, I'm supportive of this, and I'm grateful to everyone for their contributions thus far. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Well, thank you for all the contribution, as already been said. Thank you for the public speakers here this evening. It looks like, from my point of view at least, that we've sort of found a way to protect our beautiful Horsham Park as a lovely green community space. So thanks for everybody for their work, and also look forward to the review from Parks and Countryside on any other potential areas that we could look at for this scheme as well. Thank you. I'm just going to ask Judy whether we need a pause now before we go on to the next agenda item, or we sorted? Very briefly, just for some technical points. The members of the public, if you wish to leave now, that agenda item is finished, you're welcome to do so. Thank you. So we're just going to have a quick pause for some technical issues following that item.
Just check it all goes to Teams.
I think it looks like we're... Thank you. So now switched on to Teams for our next item, item number 9, which is an update on antisocial behaviour and related matters. I asked for this to be on the agenda as I noted that the antisocial behaviour ASB policy was being updated, and there was also some news on fly tipping fines. My parish in Stenning, they are exploring CCTV for antisocial behaviour, and I was able to provide them with some information, our latest information from Horsham. And I wondered if any other members also wanted to know about these policies, and they could share for their parishes too. We're going to receive a verbal update from the Head of Recycling and Waste and Community Services Manager. So if I'd like to hand straight over to you now for your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll start. I'm going to cover the antisocial behaviour policy and sort of just touch on CCTV, and then I'll pass over to Laura, who will talk about the fly tipping. So the new policy, there are just some minor updates. Nothing has really changed. We're still operating the same as we have done. But we've incorporated updated statutory guidance from the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act. And of course, we no longer have a public space protection order, and the old policy does mention that. So that's obviously been taken out as well. But I'm just going to outline our approach to ASB and community safety here. I'll start by the team. I imagine that quite a lot of you are familiar with our team, but we have So within the community safety team, we have an antisocial behaviour officer who deals with the casework, antisocial behaviour casework, largely neighbourhood disputes. But there's other stuff as well, particularly sort of place-based issues where there are sort of issues going on in specific locations. We've got a community safety officer that assists with sort of some of our various partnerships, the community safety partnership, the business crime reduction partnership. Sharon also manages our CCTV contract as well, and the network there, as well as other community safety issues across West Sussex. So she might attend sort of meetings such as sort of fraud or modern slavery, amongst other things. We've also got Lucy, who does, she commissions our various interventions for young people who come to notice, and she works closely with schools and providers. And then we've got Ross, who's our neighbourhood warden team leader, and he's responsible for the day-to-day management of the wardens. And then you can see we've got the 14 wardens underneath that within 7 schemes. They are the eyes and ears of our local communities, and they deal with antisocial behaviour as well as wider community issues, and work closely with police and other partners. So I'll move on to partnership working. This is just some information around some of our partners and some of our partnerships. I mentioned the Community Safety Partnership, which is a statutory responsibility where partners work together to address crime and antisocial behaviour. And a lot of our work, most of our work is done in partnership. You can't do it alone, you have to do it in partnership. We work with police on a daily basis. We all work with the police, the whole team works with the police. We have regular contact with community safety colleagues at West Sussex County Council, as well as children's services as well, when we're sort of working with sort of early interventions for children and prevention panels where young people come to notice. And we feed into a number of wider county-wide meetings. I mentioned a couple that Sharon go to. I go to a number of them as other ones as well. Registered social housing providers as well. I mean, I've put Saxon Weald up there because they're our largest RSL, but we work with them across the board, particularly when it comes to neighbourhood disputes, where there are tenants who are either victims of or perpetrators of antisocial behaviour. And Shelley, our ASB officer, works very closely with them. Fire and rescue, you can see one of our lovely wardens, Jordan, there with our fire and rescue colleagues. Fire and rescue are a key partner. They are a member of the Community Safety Partnership. And we also work with them around place-based issues such as sort of ASB in the Forum, for example. And the wardens work quite closely with them sort of when they're working with vulnerable people as well. Schools, I put Colliers up there, but we work with all the schools, particularly when it comes to young people who come to notice. Colliers have just been adopted as a onto our community safety partnership as well. So it's important that they have a voice at the table. And then we've got the business, the photograph in the middle to the left of Saxon Weald is the Business Crime Reduction Partnership. So we work with business partners and Sussex Police to address business crime, and we have use of DISC, which is a tool for businesses to share information on shoplifters and those that are involved in ASB and business crime that affect businesses. And I've put Horsham District Council up there as well because we work closely with other departments as well, internal colleagues. So waste, environmental health, housing, planning, parks, properties. So we work at, I think community safety kind of works across the board within the council and works with sort of pretty much all council departments as well. So I kind of wanted to highlight that sort of the internal partnership working as well as the external partners. So going on to our approach to antisocial behaviour, we have a 3-pronged approach known as PIE: prevention, intervention and enforcement. So prevention is sort of dealing with it before it starts, and that's sort of very much around education stuff. And I'll talk about each of these in turn sort of on the following slides. Interventions is nipping it in the bud before it escalates. and enforcement is used usually as a last resort when other approaches don't work and issues are continuing. So some prevention approaches here. So we've got our wardens. So we've got Oscar and Jordan there, top left hand photograph, our lovely Horsham wardens. So the wardens patrol their respective areas daily. They're the eyes and ears of their local communities, and their presence alone can be a deterrent to antisocial behaviour. But if they do see stuff going on, so for example, if it's sort of dropping litter or dog fouling or something like that, they will always educate people around ASB issues before enforcement. It's always education before enforcement. The photograph on the right, so that's Dan, our ASB youth officer, delivering one of our Grow Your Teenager programmes. So these are programmes that are delivered in schools for parents of Year 7 students around the challenges of teenage issues. And that includes things like staying safe and online safety, contextual safeguarding issues when they're sort of out and about in the community, and things like promoting self-esteem and understanding the teenage brain. I've mentioned school assemblies there, so I've put Charlie's Promise there as an intervention which is sort of very much a prevention approach, and some of you may recall that sadly 2 or 3 years ago a young person, Charlie, lost his life but through a stabbing up in Warnham, and his father Martin has started this charity, and he goes in school assemblies to talk about the impacts of knife crime. That's just one example of an assembly in school. We do things as well, along with the police as well, sort of shoplifting assemblies, healthy relationships and consent, that sort of thing. So, you know, there's a sort of a plethora of information, and it's sort of different subjects that are discussed. And community engagement as well. So we do a lot of community engagement with partners. Campaigns such as ASB Awareness Week, which is usually in July, White Ribbon 16 Days of Action around violence against women and girls, which I think this picture was taken last year around that. Hate Crime Awareness Week in October. And we'll do a lot of work with partners, so with county, with police, and also with local communities as well. So, you know, we'll engage with local people. We also have community cohesion is a community safety partnership priority, and we do have local community cohesion projects to bring communities together, particularly where there is sort of ASB issues going on. One example of that was last year when there were some issues in New Street in Horsham town, and we did a lot of partnership work with the police, with Saxon Weald, and working with residents, bringing the residents together. There was an area, a sort of a green space, which wasn't particularly used, and it was locked up, and there was some ASB going on. That was opened up, and we encouraged residents to use it. And we also brought the residents together to, and I think it sort of resulted in them creating a WhatsApp group. So it's sort of empowering them as well and bringing them on that journey. Moving on to interventions. So yeah, this is sort of, you know, where we need to sort of deliver an intervention where there is sort of low level ASB. The photo in the top left is of the people shaking hands is an example of sort of mediation, which is something that we use for low level neighbourhood disputes. So we use a charity called Mediation Plus to deliver that intervention. Home visits or writing to parents of young people who might be causing a nuisance. You know, police or our neighbourhood wardens will often do some home visits for young people who are coming to notice. And then we commission a range of interventions for young people who come to notice to get them back on track and get them to understand the impacts of their behaviour. That's often done through our monthly prevention panels, where we co-chair that now with West Sussex County Council colleagues. Local schools come along to those meetings, police come along to those meetings, and we have discussions around young people who have come to notice around how we can sort of work together to get them back on the right track. Pathways Education Project, for example, provide one-to-one mentoring for high-risk individuals. Organisations like SID Youth and For the Youth do sort of similar one-to-one mentoring work as well as group work in schools, and also For the Youth, for example, do detached youth work as well in the summer and that sort of thing. The Juno Project works with girls around building self-esteem and healthy relationships. You probably can't read it very well, but that one at the bottom with the heart is Real Love Rocks. That's a programme that's delivered by Bernardo's around safe and healthy relationships and exploitation awareness. And again, that's delivered at schools as well, in schools, for groups of, identified people. And then we've got Lodge Hill, which deliver the Challenge You programme, which is a mix of outdoor and classroom-based activities around challenging behaviours. So that's just an example of some of the interventions. There are others as well, but, I could be talking here till Christmas. And then enforcement, which is pretty much sort of the last resort when sort of other things haven't worked. And that's just information about our various enforcement measures which fall under the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act. Again, we work in partnership when enforcing, and we're not always the enforcers because it would depend on what it is we're enforcing, the circumstances. Often if there's sort of crime associated, then, the police would be the enforcers. We work with the police, we work with registered social landlords. So community protection notices, we can use these, we do use these. The police also use them as well. It's very much a stepped approach. They can be used for anyone over 16 or over, but if we were to issue one to somebody who was under 18, we would have to engage with the Youth Justice Service as well. And a warning letter must be issued before we issue the notice as well. And we would only issue the notice if that warning letter was breached, and that would have certain conditions on what they can and can't do. Civil injunctions, similar to the community protection notice, but it's a civil power. So it's the civil standard of proof on the balance of probabilities rather than beyond reasonable doubt, which is the criminal standard of proof. That can be used, but registered social landlords can use that one as well, and obviously the local authority as well. Can be used against anyone who is 10 years or over, but again, we haven't used it on young people because I think, we need to sort of look at the interventions, and again, there's a whole additional piece of work around engaging with the Youth Justice Service and the youth courts as well. But it's never come to a case where we've had to issue an injunction against a minor. Closure orders, closure powers. So we work with police and registered social landlords on those. It's often used in cuckooing cases. So when someone's property is taken over for criminal activities, the police tend to enforce on that because there are criminal activities that are going on there. We can also look at partial closures, which rather than closing the property completely, it prevents certain people from entering the property. A full closure order will prevent anybody from entering the property. And then you've got criminal behaviour orders. Again, this is something that is a police power, not a council power, and the police can apply for this on conviction of an offence, and that is aimed at tackling the most persistent antisocial behaviours who are also engaged in criminal activities. So moving on to our ASB case reviews, used to be called the community trigger. This is a statutory duty, and it gives victims and communities the right to request a review of their case where the local threshold is met, and they feel that they haven't had a satisfactory response. And relevant agencies will come together to take a joined-up problem-solving approach to find a solution. It's victim-centred, and the victim's invited to part of the meeting, usually at the beginning of the meeting, to speak to the panel directly about how they've been affected, or they can also submit an impact statement if they don't wish to attend the meeting. Some of them don't want to, but we do ensure that we get the victim's voice heard. The threshold is 3 complaints in the past 6 months. Agencies can also choose to undertake a case review for ongoing cases, even where cases where the victim has not requested one, if we feel it's sort of something that would be helpful to try and sort of provide that solution. Good practice is that it's independently chaired. So if we would normally chair it, and actually most of our ASB case reviews are issues around where they feel the registered social landlord has not, that they feel that the registered social landlord has not taken appropriate action. So we wouldn't necessarily have been directly involved in that case, so we would chair that. If it was a case where we had been involved, then we would get an independent chair, usually another district. We've got a network within sort of the districts within West Sussex. So that's that's the ASB case review. I've also put the number of activations that we had last year. So we had 8 activations last year, all of which met the threshold. And then we've got a little bit of data here on ASB from last year. You can see it, I won't read it out. Most of them are neighbourhood nuisance or are certainly our own casework. So they're recorded on our ASB database and managed by our antisocial behaviour officer. Now that doesn't include the large number of inquiries that are received through the community safety inbox, where we may provide just advice, sort of general ASB advice or community safety advice, or signpost to other services. We've got some casework there for this year as well. That's January and February. It doesn't include March. You can see the police data there. There has been some increase in ASB reporting to the police against the baseline in 2023. But I'm told that the way that ASB is recorded for nuisance has changed. So it's not necessarily a like for like. And that does happen sometimes with police data, is that they may change the way that it's recorded, which isn't ideal, but yeah. But overall, Horsham remains the safest district in West Sussex when comparing crime and ASB data with other districts. And it's regarded as a very safe place. I thought I'd also add some little bits around the wardens, around their use of their CSAS powers. So that's Community Safety Accreditation Scheme. They're all trained through the Sussex Police Scheme on CSAS, and they have certain powers, and they do work closely with police. I won't read that out, but that's just some examples of some sort of successes where they've used their powers in the last year. And then finally, I'll just sort of mention a little bit about CCTV. So we have 42 static cameras within Horsham Town, 6 in Southwater, and a deployable camera. They are owned by us, but they're not monitored by us. They are monitored and viewed by Sussex Police. We have 1 deployable camera, and that is decided, the location is decided at the Community Safety Partnership meeting. And it's currently in the process of being deployed to the South Holmes estate in Rothie. We have upgraded a number of our cameras last year to provide better coverage. So 12 of those were upgraded, and many of those now have a 360-degree view. So that's that's all good. We don't have any covert cameras, so we're not sort of, we don't have to worry about Ripper or anything like that. So that's CCTV, and that's all from me. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Bailey.
Such a range of initiatives there, my word. So you can definitely tell the desire is there, and it's also an incredibly complex field, incredibly complex. The number of young children with additional needs, with complex difficulties has grown, and the nature of their difficulties has grown alongside. It's far, far more complex. And it obviously crosses therefore over with our SEND system, which is crippling and falling apart at the seams. So, we obviously need all hands on deck to try and fix that problem. The intervention programmes, therefore, need to be very effective. We need to make sure that we're choosing things that we know work. So when we are choosing them, how are we making sure that we are selecting programmes that are evidence-based? And how are we measuring their impact so that we are only using initiatives that we know will make a difference? Additional to that, obviously the children with the greatest needs are most likely to be accommodated in specialist settings. Charlie Crosser, for example, although not a special educational needs child, did not live in our district. He came into the district, which means that we need to be working with other counties to make sure that we are joining up. I'm just wondering what's happening to make sure that we are joining up with the other counties, because we cannot do things on our own. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, we work so we have monthly prevention panels. So I mentioned it earlier. It's co-chaired with West Sussex County Council. Children's Services are involved in there. A lot of the interventions are currently funded through the Violence Reduction Partnership Programme, which is a county-led programme. Well, it's a government programme, but the money goes to county and then sort of trickles down to sort of interventions that are happening in the district. So it's a combination of some of the interventions which are commissioned by county, some of the interventions which we commission as well. Some of the interventions we actually deliver ourselves. So, for example, sort of some of the assemblies that we do, sort of, I suppose that's sort of more prevention. But sort of some of the sort of lower stuff, we would go out and sort of work with kids and sort of deliver assemblies ourselves, or sort of shoplifting stuff, shoplifting assemblies. We'd work with police, but we would, I suppose, as far as success is concerned, it's a case of looking at that particular intervention and that particular child. Has that worked? Obviously, if it's not working, we would think, okay, we need to think of something else. Does that answer your question?
What I'm getting at is, how do we know that the programmes on the table are the ones that work? Who's checking and researching and making sure that they are the best programmes, the ones that deliver impact?
When we have the prevention panel, we're looking, let's just say we're looking at little Johnny, has come to notice, he's dealing with ASB, he's involved in ASB. There will be a number of, it's finding that right programme for that individual, and then it's looking at the outcome. So then the following month, or we would come back and we would see whether that has actually worked. And as far as other counties are concerned, I've not had any. I don't think we've had any children, certainly since I've been at the council, that have come from another county. But of course, we would then work with other authorities, as we do within the county. So, for example, young children who might be causing ASB in Horsham that live in Crawley, we would work with Crawley Borough Council, and we would do that with sort of any other local authority, again with Worthing. And, if it was outside the county, then we would sort of engage with that particular local authority.
Thank you for raising that. I had also my notes here, very wide-ranging. I was really impressed at how wide-ranging the topics you do, but also that education is at the top of the agenda for that as well. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one from me. So one of the partnerships that weren't mentioned was the neighbourhood watch schemes. So in local communities that work closely with the local police force, there doesn't seem to be any affiliation with HTC in terms of antisocial behaviour, addressing it essentially. So I think that whilst the police work with a neighbourhood watch scheme, then perhaps there's an opportunity there for HTC to address some of the issues that the police are unable to due to capacity issues and more low-level crime and antisocial behaviour reporting. Is that something that is worked through at all?
Well, we wouldn't deal with crime because that's the police. That's a responsibility of the police. Obviously, we'd sort of work with antisocial behaviour, but we wouldn't be doing the police's job for them, and we shouldn't be doing the police's job.
Yeah, that wasn't. I guess that's not really what I'm trying to get at. So there's a lot more low-level stuff that's reported to the police via the Neighbourhood Watch scheme, rather than actually it could be addressed via the Horsham District Council ASB schemes. Is that not something that we could look to try and funnel away from the police more to HTC to address?
The police, we work closely with the police, and you know, if there are issues that the police feel that the council is more appropriate, it's more appropriate for the council to deal with, and they would pass that on to us, or you know, we would make those, they would make those links, and like, you know, likewise it would be the same if it was a criminal matter. We would make those links with the police, and we work with the police every day.
I suppose, Councillor Butler, are you suggesting perhaps working neighbourhood schemes, neighbourhood watch schemes on sort of deployment of perhaps of the CCTV cameras that you've got?
Yeah, and the warden's deployment as well. So locally in Kilmore Vale, we've had some antisocial behaviour, particularly around the summer holidays with youths. And the scheme's quite strongly affiliated with the police, but actually the stuff that's reported it could be addressed under the ASB through the HTC scheme. So I think there, like I say, an opportunity there to actually work more closely with the neighbourhood watch schemes that already exist to try and address issues more on a local level.
Yeah, and the wardens work with all sorts of organisations, including Neighbourhood Watch, within their localities. So they're linked in with all of the local organisations. I mean, I think it would depend on what the issue is, but then, of course, if it's something that we should be dealing with it, then we will deal with it. You know, we have to be aware of it, though.
Thank you. Just a quick question on the CCTV. Do you use facial recognition on any of the cameras, but also
No.
You don't?
No.
And do you find that positioning of the CCTVs drive the antisocial behaviour elsewhere into the shadows off that bit that you've got actual cameras?
Potentially, but we can't have cameras everywhere. You know, the police have, they now have facial recognition vans. I think they've deployed 2 within Sussex Police, and they had a van that was in Horsham Town a couple of weeks ago now. So, you know, and I think, you know, things like that sort of gives it a more sort of flexible approach rather than the sort of static cameras. And that's one advantage about the deployable CCTV camera as well, is that we can move it from place to place as and, you know, as and when we see fit.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, I think you had some questions.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 questions. When you put up the stats on antisocial behaviour, I was quite surprised at the police numbers. Unfortunately, you then said that they moved the goalposts, so they weren't counting like with like. Is there any chance that the police will actually review the baseline so that at least you have something useful to compare with? Otherwise, the numbers are absolutely useless, which is a bit regrettable.
No, probably not.
When did they change the base? Well, you may come back to me, but
well,
when did they change the baseline, and how is it going to compare next year, basically?
I don't know. I can't answer that question. Sorry. I mean, they changed the baseline. I was told changed last year. I don't know sort of the reasoning behind that.
No, it's okay. You said they changed it last year, so presumably the numbers next year will be compared with last year. So at least we will have meaningful numbers, unless they change the goalposts again, which would be something we need to take up with Neil Durkin. I would argue that stop moving the goalposts.
It's not Neil's decision, to be fair. It's something that's that you know that was decided sort of through command and control, sort of at a higher level.
Okay. Second question basically is, and perhaps this is where Laura will come in later. So you said we only have 1 deployable camera. If we're going to try and catch fly tippers, is that the camera we would use, or would we use different equipment? And if that's the camera we would use, don't we need 1 or 2 more?
I can cover that in the next presentation.
Thank you.
But the deployable camera is there for antisocial behaviour, sort of more sort of higher risk rather than things like fly tipping. But yeah, you can cover that.
Thank
Can I just pick up one of those points there? Did the police baseline data change for all their categories? Because I saw that it almost doubled for the environmental antisocial behaviour.
I was told it was just environmental.
Just environmental. There was other categories that went up significantly as well, not just the environmental. Thank you. I think Councillor Trollope's next. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I have two questions. One's more an observation. Last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, at the annual meeting of electors in Billingshurst, Ross and Laura, it is Laura. Louisa, sorry. Louisa, they gave an excellent presentation on the work they had done, and I do congratulate them for it. And they're always there in Billingshurst. I see them at every event that has Billingshurst with it. I did, at the end of the presentation, I asked them a question. I'm going to ask you the same question. I said, what can we as residents, more than district councillors, what can we do to help you do your jobs more effectively? And their answer, which made me laugh, but I think was a good one, was us stop reporting on Facebook, you know. My question to you though is you know what, you know, and they went on to talk about, you know, just properly report things and
yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
report.
Is there anything you can add to that, or are there any other areas where we can help them do their job more effectively?
I would engage. I mean, they engage with their local communities. So, but yeah, the more you report, the more that we are aware of what's going on. And I think I understand why some people don't report. They feel that sort of nothing it won't make a difference. But sometimes it can be a bigger piece of a jigsaw. I would encourage you to report anything, engage with the wardens, report into the community safety inbox, and if it's a crime, report to the police as well, because if it's not reported, we don't know about it, the police won't know about it, and it didn't happen.
Okay, thank you. My second question is a bit more challenging. In terms of antisocial behaviour, I don't know if shoplifting comes under the remit of what we're discussing tonight, but I am aware that a lot of the shop owners, especially the bigger ones like Sainsbury's and Tesco's, they have a policy for the staff, understandably, just to let it happen, to not challenge them, to not chase them out. And I feel like shoplifters are enabled because they're very, even if they have a guard at the door, they're very rarely stopped and prosecuted. What can we do as a council to somehow encourage the shop owners to maybe prosecute more, or maybe be a bit more diligent in actually discouraging shoplifting?
I mean, I think sometimes when it comes to the larger companies, that is their policy. But again, we and the police would say, you do need to report this, and the more it's reported, the more it's regarded as, well, this is a particular issue, saying sort of Sainsbury's or John Lewis or whatever. I know John Lewis do report all the time. We have DISC as well, which I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the Business Crime Reduction Partnership, which is a way that those that have signed up to it can report issues, and they can report them. If they can report them as a crime, they don't then have to put them separately into 101. So the police will, that will automatically go to the police and they will deal with that. It also has an instant messenger facility on it as well. So, for example, if there's a particular known individual that's, that's a known shoplifter within Horsham town, for example, it's something that the businesses can share and give others a heads up around it as well. So there are sort of other tools that they can use as well. But yeah, encourage them to have security guards as well.
Okay.
And train security guards.
Again, I don't think security guards help. I mean, I've seen it happen at Sainsbury's. I actually witnessed a shoplifting event, and the guard tried to say, verbally stop them, but they just walked out the door and laughed. And
sometimes it's a case of being smart within your business as well. So, for example, I've seen sort of some shops putting their alcohol by the front door, and things like that, and it's just sort of being smart within your business.
Yeah, that might be the good answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis-Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Heard a lot about interventions. a lot about prevention, and you mentioned that we are the safest area, I believe. You said that in your presentation. However, people are feeling less and less safe. And that was borne out in the recent survey that we did with the residents. So what are we doing to actually change people's perception that although we are the safest, they do actually believe we are the safest? What are we doing to change their perception of that?
I think potentially we could look at doing some community engagement around why they're feeling less safe. We do a lot of place-based issues as well. So if there are particular areas within the district where there have been reports that there's a lot of antisocial behaviour happening in those particular areas, we would do things like environmental visual audits, for example, just to see how we could potentially make that area a bit safer. And it's working with, say, organisations that sort of might help with the nighttime economy, for example, like the Billingshurst Street Pastors, as an example. So that there are sort of various interventions that we can consider to make places safer. We obviously need to know why people aren't feeling safe, and sort of engage with communities as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
The Director of Communities wants to jump in there as well.
Can I just add to what Mandy was saying, is that because you make an excellent point, and that was brought out in the resident survey. As a result of the resident survey, we're going to do a piece of communications work over the next 12 months or so to start to try and help people to understand that they can feel safe, whilst recognising if you're a single female and it's dark, you're not, it's natural to feel unsafe. I get that. So we're working on some communications to try and appropriately get the message across to our communities around what a safe place this is to live and work.
Thank you. I was just interested about the communications there. What's happening? You said you're deploying the CCTV to Roffey. What sort of communications is going in there before and afterwards, after you've got some evidence on the CCTV?
Communications with
the residents, so they understand, because you see a CCTV coming in, they might be worried about it.
There are actually old cameras that are already up there as a deterrent. So these are ones that I think that are owned by one of the local housing associations there. So it looks, so in that particular area, there are cameras there already, although they are they're old analogue cameras. But we would do some comms around, just some sort of general comms around the deployment of the camera.
Thank you. Councillor Beard and then Councillor Livingston.
Yeah, a couple of points. One, being the word community. Again, a way that we will make it safer and bring down less ASB is if we breed community. And I think that is at the core of what we're doing. We have all these preventions, but if we can breed community, then everyone has each other's backs. In a beautiful ideal world, I realise. And the second one is what part, not a question, but acknowledging the part that we have to play within the planning of all the new developmental sites that are coming up, that we make them so that they are safe and that people feel like they've got ownership and they're designed well, that the environmental aspects of it fit all of that. So we're doing our very basic stuff to lower the amount of possibility for ASB. Thank you.
Good point, Councillor Beard. Did you want to come back on that, or just
yeah, I mean, community cohesion is one of our priorities, and I mentioned sort of some of the work, where there are issues, it's bringing the communities together. I'm actually part of a wider sort of West Sussex community cohesion subgroup that's just started up because it's a Safer West Sussex partnership priority as well. And we were having this general discussion around community cohesion, around community safety, but I think it's a bit wider than that as well, because like you say, when there's a new development, for example, it's around bringing those communities together and making sure that that new development is developed in a way that is safe. So it's sort of as much community development as it is community safety, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Livingston.
We've mentioned neighbourhood wardens a number of times. My first question is, do they have an impact on antisocial behaviour in the areas which they serve? And we have to remember that quite a large area of the district is not covered by these neighbourhood wardens, particularly the rural areas and some of the larger villages even. What can we do to try to encourage the take-up of neighbourhood wardens in those areas? And possibly, maybe for the future, look at some sort of programme we can use some funding to try to educate these parish councillors who are always resistant, as you know. So if they're having an impact, we need to use them.
I think as far as the impact is concerned, I mean, they engage with their local communities, and I think the parishes that have neighbourhood wardens will report back that they are very much valued, and the fact that they want to keep the wardens and they keep funding them year on year suggests that they are having an impact. Obviously, a lot of what they do is prevention, simply just by being there, so it's very difficult to measure. Your second question around having them sort of across the whole district, all we can do is just put the case to the parishes that don't have them. And I know I went to your area last year sometime. It's unfortunate that, you know, they decided that they didn't want them, but, you know, I'm not quite sure what more we can do without putting more money in, and we don't have that money, unfortunately.
Okay, perhaps we can show, is there a way of showing how we can demonstrate the impact of having them as against not having them? You know, I try to put that together for parishes to try to do it. And some of them do have antisocial behaviour problems. I don't want to give up on this idea of trying to get them to do it, but I think we'll have to discuss it in the future still. And I still will push my parish councils to reconsider. Thank you.
Councillor Internet, have you had parish councils that do have them come and speak to parish councils that don't have them?
We did, and we had a councillor Clark at the end there, also came along and spoke to the four parish councillors and clerks, but they all still went away and thought it's a good idea, but we don't want it.
I think at the end of the day, it comes down to money, doesn't it, unfortunately?
Well, they're all sitting on quite nice nest eggs at the moment.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Just to come back on that point, the issue is, as you have said, is money. In the example of Pulborough, as an example, because I set the finances up for it, it took 4 years to set up the finances to, in fact, pay for the wardens, and quite a lot of nimble footwork. And even then, the increases of the precept were quite large, but because it was publicised and explained why, it was made more acceptable to my ratepayers, basically, as to why we went down that road. I think for smaller villages, it's much more difficult because the difficulty of cooperation increases exponentially with the number of people involved, if you see what I mean. So it is possible for a bigger village to do it. I'm not sure that without funding from somewhere else than the parish precept, I'm not sure how practically one can address the issue for what it is worth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members have a question? Councillor Boffey, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you very much. Fortunately, Councillor Livingston's picked some of it up already on me, because it was exactly what I was sort of waiting to ask about, to do with wardens, and it actually goes a little bit to something that, because Councillor Butler had mentioned it in terms of the information coming from Neighbourhood Watch and then possibly feeding into neighbourhood warden deployments, but you can only do that if you've got them. And it was good of Councillor Butler to raise that, because I'm conscious that neither her ward doesn't have any. And I suppose I'm just wanted to turn this question a little bit on its head in terms of what issues does it cause for your service area or overall, that you've got a resource in some parts of the district that you haven't got in other places? What sort of impact does that have on you operationally? Because obviously you can't, on the one hand, you don't want to sort of have, I hate to use them, well, differential treatments in different areas, but then you can't ignore the fact that you've got a resource in some places that you haven't got in others. So what impacts does it have on your service area, and how do you square the circle, if you will, of those differentials?
Yeah, it's not easy. I think, you know, where we don't have wardens, we have to rely on sort of the PCSOs, or, you know, just being aware of sort of, you know, stuff that's coming in directly through the community safety inbox or through Sussex Police or local organisations within those areas. But it's not easy, no.
Thank you.
Councillor Ellis Brown, did you have another question?
Thank you. Yes, it may have changed since I stepped away from the parish council about a year ago. However, one of the challenges we faced is that you, in the parish at that time, was they're not under the sole management of the parish council. This is neighbourhood wardens. And I think that is something that we need to rebalance, so that the parish council has more influence and say over what their duties are within their parish. Because often one asks the question of, can you go and do this? Well, that's not within our remit. And so I think there needs to be a resetting of that balance and a re-evaluation of how much control the parish council has over the wardens, for which they in fact are paying.
Thank you. So they all have steering groups who steer the work of the warden. So that is very much led by the parish. So although they're employed by Horsham District Council, and yes, we do task them to do certain things as well, the steering groups steer the schemes, and they are the ones that sort of make the priorities sort of locally to them. That said, we're sort of looking to the future. We are planning to speak to the parish councils around sort of how they see the warden schemes going LGR. So it is something that is on our radar, and we're considering, and we will be having conversations with those parish councils this year.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm getting conscious of time. Councillor Clark, quick question before we move on to fly tipping.
Well, quick, just to pick up on Councillor Ellis Brown saying, he who pays the piper pays the tune, and they're paid for by the parish council, and therefore the parish council wishes to run them, basically.
Thank you. Okay, I think we can move now on to, is that okay, on to the fly tipping topic? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm just going to talk to you about fly tipping today in Horsham District. I'll cover off what is classed as fly tipping, how we manage it at Horsham Council, and what we do to try and tackle it. So what is fly tipping? This is illegal dumping of waste, which can range from single black bags to large loads of construction material, things like appliances such as fridges, freezers, washing machines, or hazardous waste such as asbestos. And it can be on public or private land, and it's waste that is dumped there without a licence. And what is the impact of fly tipping? So fly tipping obviously blights landscapes, can pollute water and land, can harm wildlife, can endanger public health, and is costly to clear up. So this is just a photo of one of the fly tips we've had to deal with within the Horsham District. And all the photos I've used in this presentation are things we've had to clear over the last couple of years. So what is our role at Horsham Council? We are here to investigate it, obviously clear it away as soon as we can, and where we can to issue FPNs, which are fixed penalty notices, and to prosecute where we can as well. This is obviously where there is evidence, and also trying to reduce the fly tipping in the first place. So how do we manage fly tipping? So it's normally reported to us online via our Horsham District Council website, or sometimes phoned into customer services by a resident. But our crews also do report it to us as well. So if they're out and about and see a fly tip, they'll also ring it in to us so we know it's there. We receive around 120 reports a month. This is reduced to around 70 after any duplicates are removed. So that gives us 70 incidences to investigate every month. Christmas and January are normally our busiest time of year, and we often see an increase in household waste fly tipped around that time of year. So once it's been reported to us, a manager or supervisor will carry out a site visit, and one of their main reasons for going out is to try and find evidence. This is often in the form of addresses left on correspondence, or anything else that might lead us to a building company, for example. Once we've done that, if we've found evidence, that will get reported, and then we will book in to get it cleared. So this is done by one of our crews, and we aim to do it within 2 days of it being reported. The only time that we might have to take longer is if it's a large load, so it requires a larger vehicle such as a grab lorry, or if it's in a dangerous place, we would need highways to manage that through traffic management, or if it's a hazardous waste. If it's hazardous waste, we must follow protocol to ensure it's safe removal. We spend around 20,000 per year on removing hazardous waste, which is normally asbestos from things like roofings. We don't remove any waste which has been fly tipped on private land. Unfortunately, that is down to the landowner who has to arrange the disposal, but we will investigate it. So if the landowner finds any evidence within the fly tip, they can pass it to us and we will investigate as we would with any other fly tip. So evidence and enforcement. So our teams always look for evidence within the fly tip. The crews are very well trained in that as well and know to look through things and will bring any evidence back to us. If it's found, this is passed to our enforcement officer for investigation. We also have some cameras up around the district in what we know are hotspots. These are cameras that we can move around if we need to. And they are there to try and catch the fly tippers and enforce through that method. But we do obviously need to be able to see, we normally do it through registration numbers. So if we can see the registration number, we can follow that up with the police. Since April 2025, we've issued 17 FPNs, 15 of which have been paid. Currently, the FPN is £400, reduced to £250 if it's paid within 15 days. There is a proposal to raise this to the maximum legal limit, which is now £1,000, and reduce to £730 if paid within 15 days, which is still waiting to be agreed. A prosecution, so if an FPN is issued but not paid and we decide that it's worthy of further prosecution, if we go forward with that and it goes to court, it can lead to a maximum of 5 years imprisonment or an unlimited fine. And we are, even though we've been in this line of work for a long time, we always have some curveball thrown at us. We recently had this Arctic trailer, which was abandoned in Warnham, reported to us via the police, and it was absolutely crammed full of waste, and it was too dangerous to move because we were worried that it would fall apart if we tried to move it. So this is just an example of something out of the ordinary, but we had to work with highways to close the road. We had to work with West Sussex County Council to ensure the safe removal and disposal of the waste, and it involved hiring some grab lorries, closing the road, and we had to have procedures in place in case there was hazardous material in there as well. Unfortunately, there wasn't, so that made it a bit easier for everyone. And that costs Horsham Council £6,000 and costs West Sussex a significant amount as well to dispose of it. We did actually report this to the EA to investigate, which they're still doing, so we're waiting to hear back on that. And how can we tackle this? So we run enforcement days within the district. This is a joint operation with West Sussex County Council, DVLA, the EA and the police. So they mainly happen in the sort of the nicer weather, so spring, summer, autumn. We try and do at least one a quarter. The last one we did was in October. We've got another one planned for a couple of months' time. So a suitable location is chosen. Vehicles are pulled in off the road by the police because they've got the power to do that. And then various checks are run on the vehicles, which for us includes making sure there's a waste transfer note for the waste that they are transporting. The last check we did, we pulled in 15 vehicles, and 9 of these had issues, including tyres which weren't legal, insecure load, and overloaded vehicles, and 2 of which needed a waste transfer note as well. So it does flag up some of the issues out there. And we're hoping the more we do it, the more people might become aware of it, and it might deter people from fly tipping. We have CCTV cameras and trail cameras up. The trail cameras are the ones that we can use in hotspots and can move around as we need to. We issue FPNs when we can, when there's evidence and when that can be followed up. And we also try to educate residents as well. So if, for example, a resident was to ring up and ask someone to come and dispose of their waste, it's their duty to ensure there's a waste transfer note available. If that waste is then fly tipped and it's traced back to the resident that asked for the waste to be disposed of, then they can also be liable for an FPN as well. So we try to educate on that, and we try to encourage the public to report any fly tipping to us as well if it's seen, which can be, you know, they've got video evidence or they can put a statement into us. So we're working on various initiatives to try and prevent the fly tipping in the first place, but then our key aim is to try and clear it away as quickly as we can as well from the district. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that report. I'm surprised at how low it is, the fines currently. You said it might be able to go up to 1,000. When is that a national decision, or is that something that we can just choose as a council to put up to the maximum? And if so, when?
Yeah, so that's the new kind of legal limit that we can go to now, and that is up to us as a council, and it'll be a cabinet member decision to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Sharon. 2 questions, but before I go, I'm sure that we would all support you to go for the maximum penalty. I don't think there'd be any problem with that. 2 questions. In your chart, in your slides, you said 15 paid, 7 not paid, 2 not paid. So legally speaking, are we, I hope, adopting a hard line with these things and actually, wherever possible, taking a strong line in prosecuting these people for what they've done rather than taking a soft line? So that's the first question.
So anything that is unpaid would be, so we put a case together and refer it to our legal department. We would let them review it and then take the decision on whether they think we should follow it up or not.
The issue with dealing with lawyers, of course, it depends on how you phrase the question that you'll get a different answer. So hopefully we phrase a question that encourages them to support us to go for a hard line, I would hope. The second point, what means are we using to educate members of the public? Because you said quite rightly that we try and encourage people to understand the system, the penalties, and what can be done to reduce the risk to them. Practically speaking, what are we doing? Are we putting in, let's say, an article in the quarterly paper that goes around? Are we using social media? What practical steps are we taking?
So we do comms on it sort of periodically. I believe we did do something in the our district perhaps a year ago on fly tipping. I think it's probably something, obviously when we change the fine, then we've got plans to put something together for that as well to educate. We also do have on our website, so if public go on to report fly tipping or just general information, there's quite a lot there about making sure that someone's got a waste transfer note as well. But I do think, you know, drip feeding the comms is a good idea.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis-Brown and then Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. I will say the response from HTC is exceptional. It happens too regularly within the lanes where I live, but it's always gone within 2 days, and so the response is exceptional. My question really is what we've seen in the press late, and I know it's not within your remit of this presentation. We've seen 2 instances where 2 large areas have been used for disposal of waste. What should we do if we're seeing that within our, I've not seen it, but if we see that early in, what should we do, or what should we advise our residents to do if they see that happening on private land near to where they live?
I would advise that you report that to the EA because they are the body that would need to investigate that. Obviously, if it came to us, we do work very closely with the EA as well. I work in partnership with them, so we would also obviously follow that up with them as well. But I would go to the EA.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Trollope.
Thank you. The recycling centre billing service, it's a very good service and it's very efficient, and it is a booking system. And I know that there was a bit of disquiet when it was introduced, but to be honest with you, I find the booking system works quite well, and I'm able to use it quite easily. But I do think is there a correlation? Is there a correlation between restricting the use, or putting limits on the use of these recycling centres and fly tipping? Because it would seem to me obvious that there might be a correlation, and if so, is that part of the problem? Is that something that we need to speak to county to maybe invest more money to allow the recycling centres a bit more flexibility in who they allow? Because for example, I do see very clearly, it says very clearly, you have to have an address in West Sussex, and you have to bring photo ID, and you need to make an appointment, and it's all very sensible. I'm not challenging the sense of it, but it does seem to, this logic to me that if I have a bunch of waste to get rid of and I can't meet those conditions, but I'm lazy and I'm antisocial, I'll just dump it.
Yeah, thank you. I understand. I do understand your point. So I think the booking system's been made to be as easy as possible, and I know there was some issues to start with which have been overcome. I also know that West Sussex do follow sort of the trend and analysis on the booking system versus fly tips, and there hasn't been any increase in fly tips since the booking system came in. So there's no direct correlation there as far as I can understand. I think that was from analysis a couple of years ago. So, I mean, we can certainly look at it again and see. I know West Sussex obviously have to make sure that you do live in a district. They have to make sure it's only domestic waste coming in as well, because I think if they just opened it up, then you could be taking a lot of extra waste, which would be a lot of expense for West Sussex. But I mean, that is a good point, and we can have a further look at the correlation between the two.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it would just seem that the expense of cleaning it up versus the expense of, increasing the service, I have no idea what that cost would be and whether or not, that's even fair to make that comparison or not. But I would think surely something, to make it easier or more flexible, I would say, because it's already easy. So I think it's just maybe widen the criteria of who can use it and reabsorb the cost.
Okay, yeah, we can look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Laura, for your presentation. Just before I get on to my questions, I agree with Councillor Clark's earlier remark about the penalty charge notice limits. I think if we were to look at increasing them, and hopefully the Cabinet member will consider that it'll act as an effective deterrent, because if it's too low as it is at the moment, then people don't really think about it and will carry on with that pattern of behaviour. It doesn't act as the deterrent it should. So just getting on to my questions, I was quite interested in about the cameras at hotspots that you mentioned. How many of these do we have, and when they are deployed in hotspots, are they concealed or are they visible? Is it what I'm saying is, are they used to catch people in the act, or are they visible at hotspots to make people maybe think again about committing the offence? And And my second point as well was about the enforcement days. So I remember was it last year? I think I remember we did a bit of PR on the enforcement days and that it was successful. But then since then, for me anyway, I think it's gone a bit quiet. So one of my other questions is: are we actually are we still carrying out these enforcement days? And if so, how frequently are we? And if so, are we actually planning to increase them if they have been effective?
Thank you. So we have 3 or 4 of the trail cameras around the district. So they are concealed, but we do have signs up in the local area to say there are cameras. So we don't necessarily pinpoint where the camera is, but there are signs to say there's monitoring in this area. Yeah, exactly. And they do work quite well. And then moving on to your other point about the enforcement days. So the last one that we did was in October. They tend not to do them throughout the winter, and they'll pick up again probably in April. And they do work well, but it's trying to get all the bodies together to be able to do it, which isn't always that easy, unfortunately. But I do agree with you. We can try and work a bit harder on getting a few more of those done.
Can I just come back on that quickly? Also on the enforcement days, you've just mentioned that it can be challenging to get all the bodies together. Is that purely a communication issue or availability of certain staff and crews from each body on any given day, for example, that kind of thing? Because if they've been effective as they are, I would have thought that the other bodies would be as enthusiastic to take part in them.
Everyone is enthusiastic, but it is more just an availability issue. And sometimes it's also finding the right location at the right time as well, which can be quite difficult because you need to have kind of the right space to be able to pull vehicles off the road and get agreement from the landowners that we can do that.
And just a final quick question, if I may. In the hotspot areas for littering particularly, are we still pushing the adopt a street scheme, especially for those more residential areas? Because I know, especially in my own ward, where there had been issues previously, residents didn't know about it until I'd actually mentioned it to them. Despite having made reports previously frequently in the past, it would never seem to be referenced to them. So I'm just wondering if that's something we still actively push at the moment.
Yes, we do. So we have it on our website, and we do comms on it, and we've got so it's in the next couple of weeks we've got some PR coming out on it as well, actually, to try and it's amongst another scheme, but to try and exactly.
Thank you. Councillor Beard.
Sorry, just really quickly, and I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, but how to go about it? Around where I live, I could easily orchestrate a team of people if I can get hold of a whole bunch of litter pickers. Do I just contact you to get hold of them, come and grab them and then bring them back?
Yeah, you could contact us. We will hire them out to you. You have to just go through a health and safety questionnaire, and then you could give them back and you let us know where the bags are and we come and pick them up.
Good point, thank you. Are we all done on flag tipping? Thank you, that was really interesting. Thank you very much. Okay, item number 10. This is the update on the Bishopric public realm improvements. Barbara, thank you so much for sitting through the whole meeting to get to your bit at the end. Just quickly, so back in September 25, I believe it was, at this committee, we discussed the Bishopric and the Carfax consultation. The report, and it was following the REBA stage 3 stage, I think we were at the time, to regenerate the Bishopric, Worthing Road and the Carfax areas in the town centre. It was also a response to 841 responders in a survey, and also informed us about the e-petition at the time for Save Our Stream. This is just a reminder for where we were back in September. There were a few areas of concern raised at the time, and we have since discussed that outside of the committee as well. I just wanted to know, we haven't forgotten about it, and Barbara's going to give you an update of where we are at the 3A stage at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So there isn't a huge amount to update, but I think it was important as we had this meeting to make sure that we're carrying on the conversation, and we'll be, potentially coming back to you again. So the different stages in the design work, the REBA stage 3, as we referred to it, that's the sort of overarching principles of the design. and we have to establish those before we go to the next stage, REBA stage 4, imaginatively named, and that's when you get much more on the detailed work. So in other words, we need to have an overall agreement at the principal stage before we start going into the much finer detail, because once that we go into that, really the lines are drawn, so to speak, literally and figuratively, because it would be extremely costly to completely redo a very detailed design. So it's really important. I appreciate it's been some time since we talked to this committee, but there's been a lot of work that's been going on behind the scenes, and so we're doing a REBA stage 3A, an extra stage, where we are asking our consultants to take into account the comments that were received, the feedback that we've had in terms of active travel arrangements, in terms of some of the feedback from the businesses as well, on some of the detailed designs of routes and the distances between buildings and routes for pedestrians and cyclists and street furniture. That work is ongoing, and to further complicate things, which is another reason why it's taken a little bit longer, the County Council are bringing forward changes to improvements, I should say, to the bus station and arrangements around there. So we are working hand in hand with the County Council to make sure that there are two work streams going on that then clash with one another. So in other words, our designs are marrying up. So there's a lot of work that's been going on, despite the fact that it might feel as if we've been a bit quiet. I've just had an update from our designers as to when we will receive the next iteration. We had expected it some time ago. As I say, the County Council arrangements with the bus companies has extended the amount of time that's needed to be taken, but it's important to do that because we don't, it's good that we're aligned. And I've just been informed that that's going to be the end of May. So obviously we were hoping to have the information at the moment. We haven't done. So what we will do once we've got those final, those sort of next iteration, that's when we need to have another discussion with members, and we'd like to have that discussion with all members. So we'd like to be able to present that to all members. I think there might be some options within those sort of other next iteration of designs. So there'll be things to discuss as well. And so we would like to do that as soon as we can, really, after we've had the designs that we've received. But that's not due until the end of May. So realistically, we're talking about, June, I would have thought, which is a bit later than I'd expected. But as I say, there are very particular reasons for doing it, and good reasons, I feel.
Thank you very much. So we are looking for all members to be briefed, probably early June. Something like that. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we hadn't forgotten about it because it's a topic that had been sitting there for a little while. So thank you very much for updating us. I don't think we'll have any questions on that. I don't think anyone's got any questions. That'll just an update. So thank you. Item 11, update from task and finish groups. We have the S106 non-financial task and finish group. Councillor Clark is chair of that group. Is there anything you would like us to briefly update us on that?
Thank you, Chairman. I updated my task and finish my overview and scrutiny meeting on Monday. Basically, the group met on the 28th of January. At that meeting, there was an officer from the County Council who attended to discuss schools, the policies, the mechanisms used to determine the school needs, and the way these things might change. This helped our understanding of the processes involved in determination of the school needs and how it fitted into the planning system. And as a result of this, we're now moving to a stage to formulate the report on our activities, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you. We also have the domestic lithium battery and solar panel installation, where at the last meeting we approved the terms of reference as a committee. Councillor Ellis Brown is here tonight. I'm going to ask him if he's got anything else he wants to update us on that. I know there's been a bit of delay in the last meeting.
Very short. We've not met since the previous update for various reasons, but we are meeting on March the 24th, and we are seeking to engage with West Sussex Fire and Rescue Service again on this particular item. So hopefully I'll give a much more detailed update at the next overview and scrutiny meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions on that? No, thank you. I think we mentioned previously there was a potential one about licensing procedural gaps, which I'll raise again with Councillor Clark because I think it was being looked at outside of this meeting as well. Any other questions on task and finish? No. Okay, thank you. So item number 12 is the work programme, pages 25 to 26 of your pack. Table shows the work programme for our committee 26-27. One issue that has been brought to my attention that we may want to look at is has been raised recently by Councillor Livingston about the hours of continuous wastewater discharge, Mannings Heath and Monksgate in particular, that have impact on the River Arun. There's also been a lack of substantive or timely responses from Southern Water stakeholder team on those issues. I know that Councillor Clark has previously been working on this under the previous iteration of the Scrutiny group. So I'd like to perhaps ask him if he's got any comments on that before we make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. First comment I make is if anybody's not seen the documentary on Channel 4 about the spills in the rivers and stuff, I strongly recommend you look at it because, as you know, both Councillor Croker and myself, every time it comes up with planning, we talk about CSOs, and in fact, it's a lot worse than I certainly thought. In terms of working together with Southern Water, in the previous iteration, it was felt that Southern Water basically wanted to have a forum where they could talk to lots of the councils and avoid being summoned to each individual council. It started off fairly well, but I would have said in the last 9 months, it seems to have gone off the boil in inverted commas. The last meeting was basically arranged literally the day before the meeting was held, which meant I couldn't go. And since then it's been quiet. Now I know that Emma Parks goes to these as well. So if it came to looking at CSOs and possibly examining more how these things work, as I said, I would recommend looking at this documentary as a background for your education and horror, then it's something that we could consider and look at perhaps the next time around, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Livingston, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, this got me interested because I had a resident report to me about a sewage discharge in Mannings Heath, which had been going on for 577 hours continuously. So we previously got names of the stakeholder engagement managers at Southern Water. I tried to contact her and she kindly emailed me back and said she was busy, had a lot of meetings and she'd come back to me sometime the next week. Next week came and went. I chased her up continuously, day after day basically, and then I contacted the CEO via email, and eventually a week later he came back and said someone from Southern Water would contact me. But wait, another week went by where I got a response that said, sorry, my emails went into spam folder, which I don't believe because she was meant to respond from her first message. But she did say, yeah, basically it's just stormwater, diluted wastewater, but we don't know what. They say, oh, you know, I've got it here, we have a £6.5 million of investment planned at the wastewater treatment works over the next 5 years to improve our wastewater treatment facilities. That's not much money. And the outfall is set to be addressed post 2030. But here we are, we've been asked to accept planning applications knowing that we're going to be polluting our rivers. Or not polluting our rivers. What we need to understand is what is going into our rivers and how serious it is and what actions they're going to be taken. So that site in Manning's Heath, it went on for over 1,000 hours continuously, which is incredible. Okay, we've had a lot of water this year, but what's it doing to our river? And it's an important issue, I think. So I'd like to have a representative of Southern Water to come to this committee, and perhaps we could also consider a task and finish group to explore the issue, to give ourselves some confidence that when we're building these estates, that we have sufficient infrastructure to manage it, to manage the outfall of those estates. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Livingston, for raising that important point, and the fact that we don't have a point of contact. Yeah, I'll come to you. Thank you, Councillor. Has been increasing the difficulties. I think from speaking with Councillor Clark earlier as well, that we should also involve Emma Parks and Catherine as well, seeing as they've got the experience and have been on those meetings. So I'd like to throw that option in. We obviously can ask Southern Water to come along, but they don't have to. We don't have the authority to summon them, as I understand it. So they may attend, they may not attend, but it's what we do with that afterwards as well. I think that's important.
But we should ask them.
We should, of course, we can definitely ask them to attend, but we can't summon them. So before we sort of take a poll on that, I suppose, Councillor Ellis-Brown.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Unless it's changed, and I haven't checked the regulations for some time, if you write to your water company, email them, they're supposed to respond within so many days. If they don't, they have to pay you £28. It may have been increased now. And so if you don't respond within a certain time frame, they have to pay you a certain amount of money. And that is what Southern Water got themselves into trouble over before, and it resulted in a £21 million fine and an investigation by the Serious Fraud Office. So unless that's changed, if you write to your water company, they should respond within a certain time. If not, they have to give you, or they used to, I don't know if it still applies, but they have to give you some compensation.
Thank you. Well, perhaps if they don't attend, we can all start writing at least our 28 quid worth.
We should all start writing into Southern Water. But it's a difficult one because they're a statutory body, and we always do engage with them on the planning. If you see the planning application, the officers have engaged with them. And so if we're going to challenge it, we're challenging a statutory body, which is very difficult. But I think where we could look at things is the impact on a wider area in terms of, people's houses are being, when there's heavy rain, new developments have raw sewage flowing back into their houses. So, but it's a very difficult area to challenge because they are a statutory body, and the officers do ask pertinent questions of them, and it is always covered in the committee report.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
So if I can go back, Chairman, basically it was the discussion that you and I had. I thought it's a jolly good idea to look at doing what Councillor Livingston is suggesting. But before we do that, we talk to both DM and strategic planning as well to get their views and take. And then that will give us a steer as to how we structure our approach to the issue and getting that issue addressed. And both Councillor Croker and myself would be very happy if we could get any replies. Because as I said, that documentary, if you listen to it, I thought the CSO numbers were wrongly, because I work on numbers, I assume they were absolute, but in fact they're not absolute. And it is just what is recorded. What you don't know is how many times the system breaks down and doesn't report a number. You just know what is reported, if you see what I'm trying to say. So I think it's a jolly good idea, Chairman, that we look at this.
Thank you. I think I'm feeling positive vibes about putting that on our work programme going forward. So thank you for raising it. Thank you for the suggestions. We'll speak to Emma and Catherine first about the best way to do it, but I think it's likely then we'll at least ask Southern Water, they'll attend. Thank you.
Can Councillor Livingston claim his 28 quid then?
About 4 times, I think.
Can I have my 10% though? Sorry.
Item number 13, the Cabinet Forward Plan, and now our new list of forthcoming Cabinet member decisions, pages 27 to 32 of your pack. Do we have any questions on the Forward Plan or forthcoming decisions? No. Okay, well, as you can see, we have included that going forward, so you can see what is going to be signed off by Cabinet members going forward. So if you do have any questions in the future, please raise that. I think that brings us on to urgent business, which we don't have any. There could have been a LGR update today, but I definitely don't think we're going to be having that yet. So at what time have we got? 7:30 exactly. I'd like to bring the meeting to a close. Thank you very much for attending. Safe journey home, guys. Thank you.